Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arab TV, and with you, your host, Zaid Faransso, one more time. Today, my guest is Adam Helwi, President and CEO of Secret Sushi Creative Incorporation, a digital media, I wouldn't call it a startup, but a digital media innovation in the Bay Area. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much, Zaid.
Thank you for coming. We will start by introducing you to the public. So you've been in the area for quite a while, and we want a flavor of that.
Yeah, I mean, born and raised in the Bay Area, and so I think I always sort of tell people that I didn't really get an opportunity to appreciate the Bay Area until I moved away towards the Santa Barbara area and came back sometime after high school and really realized sort of how rich the community was over here when I was in my adult years. About 7 years ago, started Secret Sushi Creative, and we're a strategic design and digital marketing company now, but we didn't actually start off that way 7 years ago.
Let's back up a little bit and kind of track the path that took you to that field of business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you say like what got you there, I mean ultimately when I decided to start the company, what my focus was actually design. It was what people would consider graphic design, web design, interactive design. At the time it was called new media, even when I was going to school. And so it was pretty much design related to things on screen. And we did do print, I did print design as well, and some logo design and those sorts of things. But web design was starting to really explode in a different way at the time when I started the company, and in addition to it, you know, the web was becoming much more of this sort of, you know, Web 2.0. The term came out primarily due to Google doing some very cool things with Google Maps. That was considered the very first sort of launch of a Web 2.0 type of application, and but even before that. I mean, that's how I got into, I guess you would consider the digital side of things. Before that, I was actually working for many, many years, both on the volunteer side and as my profession with, at some point I was working with adults with disabilities. I was working sort of on the side since I had left high school, doing leadership conferences with an organization that was drug, alcohol, and violence prevention. So a lot of really sort of fun and engaging stuff in communities. And I've always enjoyed working with people, and so the two of these things, sort of the digital world and social media starting to crop up, and that being very connected to people and working with people, communicating with people, sharing ideas with people, and seeing how businesses were starting to also pay attention to that stuff. It all kind of came together at the right time a couple years ago, and that's where we are now.
Great. So I can say, in a sense, that with a background in, or with an inclination to do artistic things, you found yourself in the perfect place where digital industry have been evolving, and you found the tools for your business evolving right in front of your eyes. The internet, graphic design, new technology, and you decided that maybe it's the perfect time to use all these things. To what extent was your presence in the Bay Area or in California detrimental in your decision, or could that have been evolved in a different place? Or
I don't think so. I mean, that's a great question. I think that you know, we are the place here in California, especially in the Silicon Valley, where these startups are born that are sort of testing out and creating these things, right? So we've got Facebook, which, you know, of course didn't start exactly here, but eventually made its way here. Twitter and many of these other social networks and social properties and sort of companies that are enabling the social web, whether they've started someplace else or not, they all ultimately end up here. And because of that, not only are you within proximity to sort of the companies and the people who work there and sort of understanding what they're about to do maybe, but in addition to it, everybody who's really passionate about that, a lot of people who are very passionate about it, and sort of what I would call the early adopters, or in fact, I would like to call them the early adapters, the people who actually not only want to adopt something very early and test out and try it out, but sort of find a way to adapt it to what we're doing in our regular life and see and experiment with it on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of people here that I know, for instance, who aren't startup founders or people that have companies, but they're really passionate about using social technology or social media, the things that everybody else is doing, but sort of on the bleeding edge. And if you were to look at the numbers, for instance, of people who are doing that in the area here versus people who may be using social media elsewhere, it all sort of starts at this epicenter here in the Silicon Valley.
Most definitely. Also, let us look at the other extreme, the competition in the area. How did that affect your start a few years ago?
You know, I think, I would assume when you say competition for folks who are, either doing digital design or doing social media marketing, which is
Yes.
what we're doing. I think in general for business, no matter what business you're in, it doesn't matter. Competition doesn't matter if you have a great network, if you build an honest, reputable company that you get enough of what you need in order to make yourself survive. And so there's a lot of other reputable companies out there that are doing good work, but there's lots more, to be honest, of companies that are not doing great work and are not taking care of their customers. And so I've found that sort of trying to make sure that I keep on the straight and narrow with my customers and everything gets a lot of referrals to us. We do very little marketing, to be honest. Our marketing is doing things like going out and talking with people and actually getting to know them. Yes. and so on. On the digital marketing side, I'd say the same thing matters, but there are a lot of people that have sort of, because of the economy has not been doing great and so on, they think, well, Facebook is out there and it's free and we can figure out very easily through Google how to use it to market businesses. Maybe I can get paid to help somebody else out. Uh-huh. And there's a few folks that can do that. There's quite a few, but a majority of those folks are really they haven't owned a business or been in a position to understand how to apply this to business goals and marketing and strategic initiatives and campaigns related to that. And so it's one thing to know how to use Facebook. It's another thing how to really understand how to extract the goals of the business you're working with and then apply maybe not just Facebook specifically or whatever tool happens to be appropriate. So sort of to illustrate that, it's like taking a toolbox and looking at that toolbox and saying, well, I have a screwdriver, and this screwdriver, I'm going to find a way to hammer in a nail. You don't. If you want to hammer a nail, you identify the issue. The goal is to hammer a nail, and then you go and find the tool, and you use the proper tool to do the proper thing. And that's not usually the case with people. They think it's free, and they go for it, and they throw pasta on the wall, and they see what sticks. And then get frustrated when they waste a lot of time. It may be free financially initially, but time isn't free, and technology is not free, and learning and personnel and all the other things you have to invest into it aren't free.
Most definitely. So here I hear you talking about two fields of business, so to speak. One of them is digital industry and more specifically social media, and the other is marketing. Paraphrasing you, I can say that your field of business is to bring these two together in a form that makes life easier for people.
Sure.
So in simple terms, what does the company do?
What do we do?
Yes.
I say strategic design and digital marketing, and I mean that, and there are and so when we say strategic design, what we were saying is things don't just need to look pretty. Okay, it's one thing when you say I'm going to paint my house this way because aesthetically my eyes are pleased by those colors, and it's another thing to actually design something, whether it be a product or a service or your website or an experience or something using digital and interactive design to guide people towards the intention that you desire from them. Okay. So if you desire them to buy a product from you, or you desire them to learn about a number of things in order to lead up to signing up for something, you have to have an actual thought and strategy in mind and then design that experience. And so that's what we call it strategic design. There's a strategy to it. It's strategically thought out and then implemented. And digital marketing, it's more than just social media, to be honest. It's everything from SEO, so search engine optimization. It's social media itself is different than, say, maybe producing online video and optimizing online video and making sure that it ties back to your business goals and your marketing. So it sounds broad, and that's because it is pretty broad.
It's like telling people that the beautiful site that you look at, where you shop, where you search for a piece of information or for a gadget or
Sure.
for an industry or a service, is not just the beauty. There's some intelligent design behind this.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
and to pin the details behind that intelligent design requires the effort of a lot of people and a lot of thinking and science combined.
Exactly. In most cases, and I'm trying to think of the exact quote, but there was somebody that talked about, essentially, good design is something you really can't see. It's something that you just experience and and it feels good. But bad design, you definitely see and feel. When somebody made a poor choice and it seems really unusual that somebody would put a door there or put a bump on a step where people could trip. Those sorts of things in real life. And that's why people like Apple, for instance, here in the Silicon Valley are so successful, because they put so much effort into design because of the sort of intention they have behind the experience that they want people to have. And Apple can do that on large scales with big products, and a lot of other companies out here can do that and elsewhere. But when it comes to your website, it could mean the difference between somebody spending a lot of money or somebody getting frustrated because they come to your site and immediately there are many roadblocks in their path, because a lot of people have a tendency to design things for themselves. They see something and they enjoy it, and as the business owner, as the board of directors of a company, and they're not thinking outwardly. So when I talked about, for instance, my history in the past of working a lot with people and so on, I felt that it tied back to what I would consider empathy, having the ability and understanding to sort of vicariously understand, after some listening, after some research, what people need, not what you as the CEO needs or what the board of directors needs, because that's a very small group of people. If those are not your customers are the people at large.
The masses,
right?
yeah, definitely. The way that most people put it in the marketing industry is that, of course, like you said, when you market, you're basically marketing to the public, so you have to be closest as possible to them, even if that took you down to the streets, and that's how an initial marketing business starts, by going down to the streets, right? You mentioned something that I want to make clear to the public. It's search engine optimization.
Yeah.
Just want to explain that term to people.
Sure. So a couple things. Ultimately, there are two things. Like when you build your website has content on it. That content is whatever written word you have there. It's the photos you have on the website, all that information. But additionally, every web page is really code that makes it happen. That code is like when you build a house, it's all of the wood nails that frames everything together and keeps it there and makes it presentable in whatever fashion you're going to do. So you see everything rendered or made whole in a browser, but you don't actually see all the code, HTML and other things. And so search engine optimization is about understanding how the content should be structured when you write it, so that it actually holds the information that the user ultimately wants and that the user will also search for. Because when you use something like Google, which is getting, remember, something like 6 billion searches a month on Google, it's the old Yellow Pages. It's the new Yellow Pages, right? Somebody goes to the Yellow Pages, they have an intention right now. They want to search for a solution. They want to search for a plumber. They want to search for a lawyer, whatever it is. They have that intention, and they're going to actionably call that person at that moment. Well, when you have search engine, the same thing. In most cases, they actionably want to find that information. They're not doing it for fun. In comparison to something like Facebook, where people go sort of leisurely, they're not going there for an intention to find something other than what happens to be here for my relatives or my kids, or those sorts of things. So we want to make sure the content is really great and it's focused on the right thing, the things that people are searching for, and the right audience, so that your audience is happy. But additionally, we also want to make sure that the framework I talked about, the nails and the wood, is all built in a way that Google can also understand when it comes and says, what is this page about? What is this website about? It can read that, and then it can go back and index it as part of it. Goes, great, now when somebody searches for this content, we clearly understand what this website is about, so we can connect the intention of the searcher, the person who's looking, with the right website and the right content. And so you could imagine how hard that is for Google, and it's sort of an ever-changing industry, and the good thing is that it's changing for the better for the average user. But that's what we do, is we work with folks and we make sure that the chain of I have something I want to search for, all the way down to I found the solution or I found the web page, is as smooth as possible for businesses. Because ultimately, if somebody has an intention to buy something or an intention to find out information, and you're the one that's on there spending all this time and energy to sell it or to show that information, why wouldn't you want them to find you, right?
Yes. So I can say it in a simpler term. It's like, hey folks, when you go to Google, type a couple of words and see a list of options that tell you the answer to what you're looking for. This is the secret behind it. This is the miracle that tells you that.
This is all the invisible magic that's happening in order to make it happen.
This is what completes your sentence even before you can you type it in full. Quite fascinating, I might say. For a person who doesn't know about the way code is written or the way websites are managed, it looks fascinating for the first instance. And linking this to marketing or to people on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like we have people on one side, and then we have companies that are trying to access people with goods or with information.
Yep.
So linking that to the other side of the spectrum really makes it look different right now for the average user.
It puts the power into their hands, right? I mean, because in the past, we had a lot of people, again, who were building things for themselves, hoping that they were making the best result, the best choices for their customers, and making bad decisions, or making decisions that got the product into the hand of their consumers, but because the consumers had no voice, the poor support that followed up when you bought something or something like that didn't really ding them that bad. But nowadays, the voice is in the customer's hands. They can go to social media. You can go to Twitter or Facebook or someplace, and you can go to Amazon and leave a review about whether you like the product or not, and why. I don't know about you, but many of the listeners or the viewers who go to Amazon, for instance, I'm almost 100% sure that 75% of them go directly to the reviews first.
Yes.
Before they even read the description of the product. Mm-hmm. And so that, nowadays companies need to, they have a lot of information to go off of, because there's a lot of intent and desire of what you want out of a product already being spoken about online. That information's there. There's a lot of data that's available to read conversations. And then they can build products accordingly. They can make customers happy why wouldn't you build something for a customer if they're already telling you all the things that they would love to have as part of that? And for customers, it's a huge benefit, in my opinion.
Right, and you just expressed the voiced side of it. When people actually go there and intentionally put a review, we can also think of the unvoiced masses of people who just express their intent by the number of times they click on a link.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to weigh the information that's out there. If anybody's ever heard the term big data, this is what they're talking about. Is every time I click, that's a piece of data. Every time somebody visits something, it's a piece of data. Every time somebody says something, it's a piece of data, but it has much more clarity to it because there's something specifically said. Mm-hmm. If you go to Twitter, for instance, or even to Facebook and type in, I want to buy, or I'm so hungry I would love a pizza, or something like that. People are stating their intent or their wants, and those are ways to identify customers. I don't mean to hunt them down and to start saying, well, I've got that to sell you and I've got that, but people are expressing themselves beyond sort of what they're watching on TV and maybe what they think about the politics that's going on around the world. They're also sort of expressing themselves with small things that actually matter when it comes to businesses. So it's a very interesting time to be in. And
where's the future going?
So the future's going. The future's going mobile. I mean, so we know. I mean, I keep a big eye on how many phones are being sold now, specifically smartphones. In 2014, they say that, and it may actually happen this year. It may be already happened. I don't know, but in around this time and within the next year, more people will be connected to the internet through mobile devices than they will through desktops or laptops, okay? That'll never go back. It'll never revert back. And the reason why is because now the trend is that when you're young and you get your first computing devices or your first computer, it's your mobile device. It's either a tablet or it's a smartphone. So that's one thing, it's going mobile. And along with going mobile, there's a lot more context to what you do. So when I tweet or when I do something, I can actually have things like my location associated with it. What time of, all different things, like could be altitude, it could be what's the weather like. I mean, whatever happens to be available to sort of bring together on your phone through where you are in the mobile world, and all the sensors and things that are on this phone can now be sort of leveraged and expressed through social media, which is really quite interesting, I think.
And we have a lot of science fiction stuff that are turning true.
Yep.
We keep counting them. I actually have, I saw a website that counted all the science fiction gadgets from the 80s, things that were considered at the time to be fictional. And most of these things are now in practice. So cell phones, watches, mobile devices in general, as a long list of things.
I would say beyond the technology, the most important thing is that the world is becoming flatter. The ability to we talked about before we started recording, we talked about the Arab Spring and how social media made that, really empowered that to happen, and it's empowering political movements and things both good and bad all over the world, but primarily good. It's when things, the communications are being put into the hands, the ability to mobilize and share information and find others that are on the same page as you with things. It's all in the hands of the average consumer now, and so the world is getting flatter. People here in the U.S. can now converse very quickly and easily with folks anywhere in the world. And I think one of the things we'll see happen in the future is the ability for somebody to speak natively in their own language, and for it to seamlessly be translated for the end person. So if there's 3 people in one country that speak 3 different languages, and one person speaks Arabic, for instance, that Arabic tweet or whatever it ends up being can get translated based on what my preferences are into my language, and we can start having a conversation without sort of worrying about going to Google Translate or use some other sort of technology. It all happens seamlessly. So the world will continue to get flatter and flatter because of that.
The freely flowing media and information
Exactly.
in general. And I can definitely relate to what you're mentioning about translation. We started to see some websites that offer this characteristic of translate the comment. It's probably rough, it needs to be polished a little
Yep.
bit, but it's definitely a solution. It can give you a very good idea about what you're reading.
Definitely.
That's as far as technology and probably the marketing side of it. What about social media? Where is it going? And I want to sound a little bit antisocial, because that's what current social media have taken us. It's pulling people away from the actual social interaction and into a world of fantasy, so to speak. Quite a nice world, but the emphasis is not on the real things. Do you think that is going to get worse?
So I would say that I would sort of almost agree to disagree for some of that, what you're saying. And the reason I would say that is, when we started, when sort of social media, if you would consider that started, for instance, I was somebody who used AOL, America Online, many, many years ago. And when you started using AOL, you were always using sort of a fake account name. You weren't using your real name. There was no sort of social profile that said who you really were, all those sorts of things. And so you were sort of living a fantasy. Whatever your name could be, that became your persona. And that exists in some areas online right now. But specifically, if you think about something like Facebook, it's all reality. It's all about who you really are, your real name. It's bringing sort of much more meat, putting a lot more meat on the bone about who you are as an individual, and sort of encapsulating it on this stream on Facebook. I think what you're referring to is the difference between those folks who are very immersed in it, when their mobile device is out and they're sitting here like this instead of engaged with
Yes.
somebody that's in front of them. And to me, what I would equate that to is the difference between, it's like the saying goes, too much of anything is not good.
Yeah.
And so social media, I think the interactions that are happening are very real. Obviously, we've got a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, Arab Spring and those sorts of things. So the interactions are very real, and in fact, they lead into very real face-to-face interactions as well. But there's definitely a trend where I think it's kind of like the pendulum swinging. The pendulum has started to swing a little too far for some people in the direction of just being face down in their mobile devices and not paying attention to the people in front of them. And I think it's going to eventually, as this becomes more regular and mainstream and more of a regular part of our lives, that people will eventually find a balance and understand how to use social media as a way to connect, and ultimately that being face to face, being able to shake your hand, being able to have a coffee with you in person is the ultimate social media. It's the ultimate place to get. But that LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and a lot of these other places actually are facilitators of that.
Nice. One last question, slightly off topic, but it just came to my mind. Secret Sushi, where did the name come from?
I can't tell you. If you email me or you reach out to me, I'll let you know. The explanation is a little bit longer than it should be, but let's just say it's interesting. Most people ask me that question. Every single person does. And if you reach out to me, I'm happy to tell you why.
It's quite a secret. Well, glad to hear all this approach into an industry or a field that a lot of people don't really know about. We're fascinated by what we see, but we're unaware of all the nuts and bolts that keep the thing glued together, that keeps the engine moving, and that keep our computers functioning the way they are. Even those of us who claim to know a little bit about computers, they stand helpless when it comes to the programming data and websites and how they work, and we can hardly understand the system, not let go, work on it or adjust it. It was quite an entertaining insight, and we thank you for all the information that you gave us. Thank you for the time, and we wish that you progress and that you create a lot of things that will help the market, help people get to what they want.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you a lot, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.